Hello everybody, Jack the Jobber here, back with my full review of WWE SummerSlam 2026, both nights, night 1 and night 2. And obviously, as you can see, the big question I've posed in the title there is, was the show actually good? Because there were definitely parts to enjoy. Not everything was brilliant, and I'm going to go through every single match across both nights, of course, and give my thoughts on each individual bout. But I thought that there was quite a lot to enjoy. I went on to Cage Match because I'm really cool after night 1 to check the ratings on there, and they were generally lower than I would have expected. Is that because I just enjoyed the matches more than the general consensus, or is it because WWE in recent times have kind of lost the goodwill of their audience, or at least like our section of their audience, you know, like the online hardcore wrestling fan part of their audience? And I thought this over, and I think SummerSlam across both nights was a pretty good show. I think there was certainly some things to enjoy, but I don't think it was like a blow-away or an amazing show that would have particularly stood out in a particularly strong year for WWE, which of course this has not been so far. And even if further pay-per-views or PLEs are of a similar quality to this one, or even better, I don't think that's any guarantee that the product overall is going to improve, because I think you also have to take into account the storytelling, the booking, the weekly TV. There are a lot more ingredients than just the quality of a pay-per-view. But yeah, that's what we're here to discuss on this video. It was a step in the right direction. Now let's dive in. I'm going to go through just, I think, in completely chronological order. That seems to be the best way to go, starting with the first match of night 1 for the Women's World title, Liv Morgan defending against Iyo Sky, who of course beat her not so long ago. Could Iyo do it again? No, she couldn't do that. There were rumours before the show began, on night 1, remember, that Cody versus Punk was actually going to open the show, which would have been a very bold decision for the WWE title match featuring two of your biggest stars. Obviously to make room for Brock Lesnar versus Femi in the main event in Brock's home state of Minnesota and everything. But no, instead they went with Liv versus Iyo, which I think turned out to be a decision that really paid dividends. My main takeaway from this match is that they were given time. They were given time, and my mind goes back to WrestleMania 42 earlier this year when Liv was given shockingly little time in her big title match victory over Stephanie Vaquer. And now she was given enough time to fully tell a story in the match and to try and impress. And I think both women in this match really impressed. Iyo, of course, remains fantastic, but it's also probably, I think it's the best Liv Morgan singles match I can think of that immediately springs to mind, ever. We had various different big moments, often centered around big spots or attempted finishes or finisher reversals. In fact, I think the two most memorable moments were a stolen finisher with Iyo hitting Oblivion on Liv, very, very nice indeed, albeit on a weekend where by the end of it, we would have seen a lot of stolen finishers. And also, the other big moment was Iyo's reversal of Oblivion, like doing a perfectly timed kind of head spring to land back on her feet, only to then fall victim to, I think, a big lung blower and then one final Oblivion, and Liv retains, which is obviously not going to be a hugely popular decision among big fans of Iyo Sky, myself included, but at least Liv is now getting a chance to actually do something as champion and prove what she can do. I really enjoyed this. This is one of my favourite matches of the whole weekend. It wasn't just those big two moments I've talked about either. There was quite a lot of stuff in here. Obviously, Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez interfered, but they were not instrumental in the finish of the match, which I think was a wise decision because that would have felt quite stale, I think. Quite an obvious finish, and I'm glad they avoided that. And generally, I have very minimal complaints about this one. I thought it was a really good opener, a really good choice of opener as well, and it really set the show off on the right foot. Not my most thrilling match analysis ever there. I think it was pretty self-evident. It was a good match. I enjoyed it, and I thought it was good, and most people seem to think it was good. Good. That was followed by the 6-man tag team match, Jacob Fatu and the Usos, representing the Bloodline, of course, taking on the quite weirdly assembled team of Solo Sikoa, LA Knight, and Royce Keys. AKA my new favourite trios team in World Wrestling, because these guys were a lot of fun. And the main reason that they were so much fun was Solo Sikoa. I don't know why WWE have suddenly decided to let him show, even more personality, but he's really, really good at it. He's really genuinely funny. He is a fantastic... Who was the heel and who was the heel team? Who was the face team here? I don't know, but based on just the action and the crowd response and everything, Team Solo were the baby faces by far. So yeah, Solo Sikoa, despite not being the guy to get the pinfall in the match or anything like that, dominated this one for me just by sheer force of personality and his charisma. And even a moment that, yes, was quite silly, where Solo ran it back like Jey Uso does and somehow summoned the yeet, like the theme song playing again, but now Solo's doing it. Okay, fair enough. In terms of just sheer match quality, this was not as good a match as the opener, but there were big moments like Royce Keys with a nice slam over the barricade, reversing a charging Jacob Fatu. Off you go, over the barricade and everything like that. There were a few cool moments like that. That was probably the biggest one I can think of. Solo cropping up on the apron, as he has done earlier in his career, to hit the Samoan spike to foil, I believe, Jimmy Uso, allowing LA Knight to hit Jey Uso with the BFT and pick up the win. Jey Uso taking the pinfall is not at all what I would have expected in this one. I actually incorrectly predicted that the Bloodline would win because it's the Bloodline. I think a lot of people were probably smarter than me and correctly predicted the outcome, but I wonder how many people would have predicted that it would be Jey taking the pinfall. What does this mean? Does this represent a serious, an even greater fall down the card than we had previously imagined for Jey Uso? Possibly. It's definitely a noticeable booking decision to have that as the finish of the match. But yeah, the moral of the story is Solo Sikoa is possibly the single most fun superstar on the entire WWE roster right now. Go on, Solo. Yeah, give him a mid-card title run or something. Well, given results we're going to talk about later on, that could be a bit of a stretch. They might not be having any more title changes quite yet. Next up, Gunther versus the SmackDown General Manager, Nick Aldis, who comes out to Morning Glory by Oasis, and you could hear simultaneously every Englishman who'd stayed up to watch this match leaping out of their chairs, myself included. What a tune. Great entrance music. And WWE very rarely use licensed music. It's more of an AEW thing these days, isn't it? But I'm really glad they did here. It worked really well. Wade Barrett, so hyped on commentary, not only because it's his friend, but just because he loves Oasis as well, as all Northerners from England are contractually obliged to do. This was a really gutsy effort from Nick Aldis. It wasn't like match of the year or anything like that, but I found it quite an impressive performance from him, given that he spent quite a few years now away from the ring. He looked maybe slightly blown up at certain points in this one, but it didn't lead to any mistakes or anything. And I think, really, it could have just been selling the exhaustion and the physical effort of having to take on somebody like Gunther. So I don't know if he was, but even if he was legitimately quite a bit tired by the end of this, like in real life, I don't think it mattered too much because it didn't lead to any major slip-ups and it just sort of fit the theme of the match. There were several cloverleaf teasers as well in this one, with Aldis really taking it to Gunther, Gunther having to resort to a rope break, a sleeper reversed into one from Aldis as well, which was cool. That got a big pop from the crowd. We know that Gunther has had trouble with submissions. He loves using the sleeper, of course, but when he's caught in one, he's not infallible. But this very much led to the finish, with Gunther kind of breaking free of this sleeper attempt from Aldis and hitting a nasty Saito suplex into a powerbomb, into the sleeper. Aldis fights bravely back to his feet after Gunther has had the sleeper fully cinched in, but Aldis fights to his feet, and then they drop back down again, and Aldis is forced to tap out. Perfectly serviceable. I enjoyed this. By this point, I was thinking, well, we've had an opener that I really enjoyed, a not brilliant, but certainly fun six-man tag, and now this match, which I also felt over-delivered, and I was on my way to thinking, whoa, is this going to be an amazing show? I get that you could definitely argue, just in terms of the booking, that this is not the best use of Gunther, of course. They really do enjoy, after the Pat McAfee match and now this one, they do seemingly enjoy throwing Gunther in there against, older or part-time or even non-wrestlers. I mean, he retired Cena, he retired AJ. He's clearly seen as someone who can very reliably work with maybe people who aren't fully back in ring shape, haven't yet shaken off all the ring rust, or indeed complete rookies as well. But of course, you also want to have him further up the card, ideally. Someone with the presence and the ability and the talent of Gunther needs to be further up the card, which one night ago would have been a very valid criticism. But as we'll see later on night 2, they kind of semi-addressed that. All good things must come to an end, and unfortunately the next match, the 6-woman tag, Fatal Influence taking on Paige and the Bella Twins, this has to go down as maybe one of the bigger negative points of the weekend for WWE. I don't think it was like a disaster or anything, but it was certainly one of the worst matches of the weekend, and unfortunately seems to have led to a legitimate injury as well. That's because Brie Bella, in taking like a running cannonball senton kind of spot while leaning against the ring steps, seems to have like injured her shoulder in some way. I think because she's meant to have been holding her arm in a weird position as the move was taken. Hopefully she's not out for too long. She couldn't use the arm again for the remainder of the match, or indeed the post-match angle, which we'll talk about as well. But yeah, very, very unfortunate for Brie, and hopefully she's okay. And this was kind of a similar story to the the match where Paige returned at WrestleMania 42, where there's a lot of people involved, but not enough time for them all to shine, really. So you did get the sense that they were kind of getting all their stuff in, kind of rushing between spots a little bit maybe. Not the fault of the wrestlers necessarily, probably more the fault of the runtime. Although I will say, as a general point, this was far better than WrestleMania in terms of giving matches the time they deserved. Although there were still issues with like incessant product placement and ad breaks and that sort of thing. They don't seem to be going anywhere now. That's just what the WWE product is these days. But I feel it's important to keep on mentioning it now and then so we don't just fall into like a state of hypnosis where we start to believe it's always been this way, because it certainly hasn't. Anyway, the heels get the win, which I think is the right call. I was worried that this would be a babyface win when the heels really needed this more as the younger up-and-coming trio. But in fact, they did get the win, which is a good decision. And I thought, that's all well and good. But where does this leave the babyface team? And that was answered immediately, to be fair, after the bell, as the Bellas console Paige, who took the pinfall in the match, and then they beat her down. Or like Nikki does like 99% of the beatdown, but that's understandable because Brie still couldn't use one of her arms. And yeah, the Bellas turn heel. I think that's a good thing. I think it just feels more correct for the Bella Twins to be heels. It's much more natural, especially Nikki. But yeah, if you're going to turn them both heel, I have no complaints about that at all. I wonder what's going to happen next. My guess would be that Paige needs an ally now to take on the Bellas. And in my mind, the first person that my mind kind of leapt to was AJ Lee. But now that Brie's injured, they could really just do a singles feud, I guess, for a while between Nikki and Paige. But then what does AJ, or whoever was planned to be Paige's ally, what do they do then in the meantime? A lot of questions. And I'm also just assuming a lot there as well. Next up, and I think a lot of people's most anticipated match of the weekend, Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk, with Punk defending the WWE title. But I don't think, and I hope I'm not being too harsh in saying this, I don't think it really delivered on what it could have been. Just given how much people expected from this match. Myself included, I'm a big fan of Cody, of course. I'm a huge fan of CM Punk, of course. But this match felt like it left a little bit to be desired. Again, not a disaster. A pretty well-worked match for the most part, featuring some great moments, of course, that you are almost guaranteed to see now in a big, well-thought-out CM Punk, not main event match, but main event feeling match. He also took a crazy bump through the announce table, feet first, and that played into the overall story of the match. The story of Punk's leg being worked over and weakened throughout, sometimes by accident, by his own doing, like that big catastrophic table spot, sometimes deliberately from Cody Rhodes, who, like in his last year SummerSlam match against John Cena, was unlocking a little bit more of a vicious side to himself. Like a little bit more. And once again, just like last year, midway through the match, there were people in my Patreon chat as well, shout out to everybody at my Patreon, there were people on social media as well, all saying, oh, this could be the Cody Rhodes heel turn we've all been desperately waiting for. And just like last year, again, it wasn't. How many times is Cody going to have to suffer a big loss or feel like he's been screwed or get attacked or get disrespected or beaten down or bloodied up to finally snap? The guy has the patience of a saint. And that's what happened here. You know, after a match where Cody had CM Punk right where he wanted him, on one leg effectively. And my favourite bit of the match, I think, is where Cody nails several big like signature moves of his in a row. I think he hits the Cody cutter and the disaster kick and then the super Cody cutter, like the one off the corner. And Punk just has to take all of them in a row because he can't get out the way because he's lost his mobility for now. I was like, okay, this is going somewhere. Punk can't get him up to do the GTS. It was all shaping up really nicely. But then I think in the second half of the match, it maybe lost its way slightly. Like suddenly Punk, despite all this damage to his leg, he's suddenly powering Cody up for multiple GTS attempts, sometimes in quick succession. I'm like, okay, how does that really work? Or the moonsault attempt from Punk, which was crooked, wasn't too bad because he's never claimed to be the most athletic. In fact, he's joked about his lack of relative athleticism for a wrestler. And he does kind of ruefully laugh about it in the moment, not getting all of it, just clipping Cody, but just enough, I guess, to make it look still believable enough. But the worst culprit in this match was the booking. It was the finish, which was an exciting moment and one that popped the crowd, but not something that like filled me with optimism for, you know, Cody Rhodes' plans heading forwards. The ref gets bumped, Randy Orton runs in, RKO to Cody, Punk doesn't see it happen, takes advantage, wins the match, retains the title. And this is not the feud that I think Cody Rhodes needs at all. We don't need to go back to that WrestleMania feud, which was a disaster, no fault of Cody's or Randy's, but it was bad times. I don't know if anybody particularly wants to relive that now. Maybe the wrestlers themselves want to run it back and do a Cody versus Randy match their way with no other input or like outside forces. You know what I mean? I'm talking about Pat McAfee. But when I say I don't think that's what Cody needs right now, I mean in the sense that he's getting heat from the crowd sometimes. Unless he's facing someone the crowd really, really despise, Cody's often the one getting booed against these other big names, like CM Punk, for example. Punk was the more popular guy in this match, despite them both being babyfaces. Cody, we've already seen at WrestleMania, can't get cheered against Randy Orton. Randy's too big a legend. He's too beloved at this stage of his career. Cody is never going to get cheered. I am once again, but I feel like I say this every time, I'm once again hoping that this is the feud where Cody Rhodes finally snaps and finally turns heel. I know that Cody has said before that he really wants to just be like a forever babyface. He wants to be a Luke Skywalker. He wants to be the good guy all throughout the rest of his career. But I think it would really give him a serious boost in momentum if he were to turn heel. Cody is capable of being a wonderful heel. I'm not talking about Stardust or anything like that. I'm talking about the smarmy, Bullet Club, oblivious, oh, everybody loves me, you know, New Japan heel Cody. That's the Cody I want to see. And he's already proven that he can do it really well. So let him do it again. And the final match on night one, the Hell in a Cell match, Brock Lesnar versus Femi, the third match in their rivalry. Did it have exciting moments? Yes, 100%. It absolutely did have exciting moments. Was the Hell in a Cell stipulation necessary at all? No, they could have had this match without the cell. They could have just had like a no DQ. I don't know if I'm maybe going to have a bit of an unpopular take here, because obviously everybody loves Femi, and he came out of this looking monstrously strong in the moment. I mean, the biggest moment in the match was Brock Lesnar somehow safely delivering a tombstone piledriver of all moves on a person the size of Femi onto the exposed wooden boards, and Femi kicking out. And then like hulking up, like immediately, like just firing up, and it led directly into the finish of the match with Oba getting the win with the fall from grace, which I suspect was maybe meant to be onto the exposed boards as well, but they kind of missed, but the move was landed cleanly enough and everything. And Oba gets the win. He wins the feud. There was no ambiguity about that. Brock congratulates Oba after the match and everything. He says, this guy's the future of the business. It didn't feel like a Brock Lesnar retirement. It was far less emotional than the aftermath of their first match at WrestleMania, where Brock took his gloves off and everything in the ring. Not and everything. Whoa. But I still, and this is what I mean by this maybe being an unpopular take, I still would rather they just had the first match and that was it. Oba looks really strong, he does. But he has now won 2 out of 3 matches against Brock rather than just one and that's it, which would have been far more effective in my opinion. And also, he passed up a title match for this match in like a kind of poorly disguised way of getting around Roman versus Oba, which the fans would have been screaming for a title change if that had taken place, which WWE have no interest in doing at this stage. So yeah, I think it just feels in WWE world to the viewer, I just think it feels like something's not quite adding up. Something doesn't quite make sense. This guy has won a feud against Brock Lesnar, who we are often told is the beast. He's unbeatable. Oh my God. Oba's beaten him twice now. Brock Lesnar has stood there and said, this guy is the future. It was a total torch passing moment, but he's not got a title shot. He's not in line. But on the whole, I thought the positives on the show outweighed the good. You know, parts of Punk versus Cody were very good. Parts of the main were very good. The opener was superb. The six-man tag was fun. I really enjoyed Gunther versus Aldis as well. Night 2, again, mixed feelings on what we've, at the time of recording, what we've just seen. The night begins with Sami Zayn versus Finn Balor. Or does it? Because after both men have made their entrance, Nick Aldis appears in the aftermath of his beating at the hands of Gunther and says, oh, by the way, guys, I'm adding somebody to this match. And suddenly it all made sense because in the build-up to this show, I was racking my brain trying to work out who was going to win this one. I was going back and forth because I was like, well, now we know, especially now we know that Punk's retained actually after night 1. I was thinking, well, who's going to face Punk then? Balor's already faced him like twice this year. He's just taken the belt from Sami, so maybe they'd go Sami versus Punk again, but are people really going to be as excited this time? And then when Aldis said that, I was like, right, well, this is exciting then. Who's it going to be? And it's Gunther. So then I was thinking, okay, that's certainly a more fresh matchup. It's been a little while since we've seen Punk versus Gunther, but it's a match that, you know, we've already seen on a big stage. So I wasn't like the problem's totally cured or anything like that. And then Nick Aldis said, oh, and I'm actually adding another person to this match as well. And then Kevin Owens' music hits and the crowd explode. This was one of my favourite returns in recent memory. This was so good. Kevin Owens is really, really good at being intense. And even when he's a heel, which he certainly wasn't here, Kevin Owens has such a raw intensity and such a blatant aggression about him that when you're watching him march his way to the ring and like screaming and shouting, you just have this feel like, yes, go on, Kev. Like, it's hard not to cheer for him. The match was pretty fun as well. Owens was doing some scary stuff straight away. Like, he was doing high spots to the outside. He was doing running cannonballs. Protect your neck, Kevin, please. But I assume that he's absolutely fine and ready to go. And he went for it. He wasn't holding back here. This was the same old Kevin Owens. He was moving the same, which is a great relief to see. And the moments between all four men, the various different combinations and the various different interactions, they were all quite fun and quite well thought out. It did fall into the trap that often multi-man matches can have, where it's just two guys resting on the outside and two guys having basically a singles match in the ring for a little bit. But the moments involving Owens and Zayn, as always, were really, really entertaining. In fact, I think my favourite of these moments came towards the start of the match, where Owens has just taken out Finn and Gunther, and he comes face to face with Sami, who hasn't moved a muscle since Owens was revealed as the fourth man. And finally they come face to face, and Sami sheds this Weasley heel skin of his that he's been wearing recently. And of course, well, they hug first, and then they do the hockey fight, the right hands, and the crowd are coming unglued. Really, it's so good to see Kevin Owens back. The rest of the match was kind of as expected. All four men are good wrestlers, very good wrestlers, what am I saying? All four men are brilliant wrestlers, and they weren't given a great deal of time, but it was good for what it was. But this really was less about the match from the moment Kevin Owens was revealed as the fourth man, and more about the excitement to see him back. And rightly so, he is the winner. He goes on to face CM Punk for the WWE title. I'm so excited. That feud on the horizon is the best thing about this whole weekend, in my opinion. The fact that we're going to finally get to see Punk versus Owens on a big stage. And I say that for two reasons. One's very obvious, of course. They're both really good, and they're both very intelligent wrestlers at putting their matches together, and I'm sure they're going to work out a really compelling story in their match itself. But the second reason, and if you know the background between Punk and Owens, the second reason is the feud, the build, the promo material we're hopefully going to get, the non-wrestling segments. This could be something very special, and I hope that WWE allow it to be. That's because in real life, I believe, unless I'm being totally worked, which is always a possibility, I believe they had real heat on the indies, and that Punk didn't really like Owens and was quite mean to him. And in a similar way to Punk's feud with Eddie Kingston in AEW, I imagine that Owens is now going to let all of that rage spill out of him, and hopefully we'll see something really magical. And I think we probably will, because they're both really good. Anyway, that was good. A bad thing happened next, guys. A bad one. The next match was Baron Corbin challenging Trick Williams for the US title. Much has been made of Trick Williams in like season 3 of Unreal and everything, and WWE's press machine. They always mention Trick Williams as one of the rising stars, along with the likes of Femi or Bron Breakker or whoever. Trick Williams is always one that gets mentioned. This kid's going to be huge. Wow, what a star he is. This match did not help make him look like a star. And I know that often a mid-card champion has to drop that belt to advance further up the card. And I desperately hope that is why Trick has dropped the belt here. I hope he doesn't now get bogged down in a long feud with Baron Corbin. Nothing against Corbin, you know? I often think that the worst thing about Corbin isn't the man himself, it's the booking of Corbin. He was booked, like often Corbin's career in WWE, he was kind of booked incessantly and would get in the way of preferred storylines and that sort of stuff. But that's not Corbin's fault. You know, he is a perfectly serviceable wrestler with some very, very good signature moves and all that kind of stuff. He busted them out here. He had a big deep 6 on the outside. It was great to see. But on the whole, this match was very frustrating to me. They were just doing stuff. What I mean by that is like, you know, they got a table out for no reason early on, and obviously it played into the finish. But this wasn't a no DQ match or anything, and the table was barely, like, it was barely disguised that the table was set up in such a way. Midway through the match, Lil Yachty, who was with Trick, of course. I still don't know why Lil Yachty has been paired with Trick. Trick does not need a hype man. There are countless other wrestlers on the roster who would much more benefit from Lil Yachty than Trick Williams, who is one of the most charismatic guys on the entire roster. Anyway, Yachty hits Corbin with a kendo stick. What are you doing? You're meant to be the babyface, whatever. Corbin bravely, even though he's the heel, survives the pinfall attempt after that. Drags Lil Yachty up to the apron a little bit later on. Trick rushes in. Yachty gets bumped through the apron on the through the table on the outside. Oh my god! And Corbin hits end of days to Trick after a belt shot behind the referee's back and wins the US title. Trick Williams has lost to Baron Corbin. Again, hopefully this just means that Trick's ready to move further up the card. I don't think I can be blamed for not having a great deal of confidence that that's what's about to happen. And I feel this way because WWE have done nothing really to earn our confidence as fans in recent times. In terms of the speed of people's pushes, these so-called superstars who are going to be the stars of the future, and you know they're ready, they're on the cusp, they've got everything, they're stars. Book them like stars then. I don't know if they will. I really hope they do. I think Trick's got something special. I just don't have a lot of confidence. Next up, the interim WWE Women's title match, a 5-way ladder match between Charlotte Flair, Jade Cargill, Tiffany Stratton, Chelsea Green and Lash Legend. On the poster there you'll see that Lash isn't there because when the poster was made, or this version of it, we were still waiting for the result of Lash Legend versus Julia in the qualifier, and Lash won. So I've got mixed thoughts here. Well, I've got various different thoughts. Some of them good, some of them bad. Let's do the bad first. I don't like the interim title thing. I don't think it works in wrestling. I don't think it worked in AEW when they did it with their women's title. I don't think it really works now. Even though, you know, obviously I hope Rhea Ripley's back in action as soon as she can. I hope she's all good and everything. But I don't think you should keep the belt on a champion who's on the shelf. I don't even think it works in real combat sports, as we've seen in the UFC heavyweight division. And in wrestling, I just think it devalues whoever becomes the interim champion. But in this case, at least the outcome was very well received. The other thing was the match type. Multi-person ladder matches look like an absolute nightmare if you're a wrestler in them. The wrestlers are always like trying to awkwardly position themselves around all these ladders or avoid landing on a ladder that's laid on the canvas or in the corner or whatever. It looks like a recipe for disaster, and I wouldn't be surprised if wrestlers dreaded being in one. And because of that, often, especially people who aren't like ladder match specialists, like the prime Hardy Boys or Edge and Christian or whatever, just your average normal wrestler who doesn't normally wrestle this type of style, often these matches become a little bit clunky and awkward and too obviously cooperative, where wrestlers are careful to not injure each other or themselves, obviously. It also becomes too obviously cooperative in terms of the logic of the match in kayfabe. Often that comes in the form of blatantly setting up ladders in a certain place that doesn't make sense. You know, you're meant to be trying to get that belt hanging above you. Why are you setting up a ladder bridge from the apron to the crowd barricade, stuff like that? Sometimes wrestlers help each other set up certain constructions and everything. We've all seen examples of that. In this match, the big egregious moment for me in terms of its planning, none of the wrestlers' fault, came when Tiffany Stratton went to hit a head scissors, I can't remember on which opponent, but in the corner with a ladder below her wedged between the ropes. And then it got reversed into a huge powerbomb and Tiffany took a really good bump and it was a highlight spot in the match, but one that made no real sense to me. Because if Tiffany completes that move successfully, it was like a Frankensteiner, she'll hit the ladder herself anyway. I don't understand what they meant. What were we meant to think there? However, the positive stuff, two big positives. The winner, which was Chelsea Green, who deserves that, because we've been told time and time again that Chelsea Green is brilliant, WWE love her, she can take anything and make it good. Well, it's time to reward her, and I'm very glad they did with a big win here. The second good thing they did was the way that her involvement in the match was structured. Twice, I believe, she came very, very close to pulling down the title, and she was foiled either by another competitor in the match or by the run-in from B-Fab and Michin to help Jade Cargill. Both times the crowd were like really hot for her like to win and then deflated and let down. So then when she finally did win, it was one of the biggest reactions of the weekend. And yeah, like I say, Chelsea Green is a very deserving champion, I think. Despite not being, you know, a work rate, super work rate kind of wrestler, someone we might think of as a more typical champion, or somebody who's like big and imposing. But what she is like so charismatic, almost boundlessly so. And I think she can definitely make this title reign, or this interim title reign, a very entertaining one. The big question is, assuming Rhea comes back and is still champion, what happens then if Chelsea's still interim champion? What happens there then? Because they're both quite popular baby faces now. There's a lot of different ways this could go. Chelsea could drop the interim title. Rhea could... I'm not going to speculate because I guess we'll just find out. But for now, positive stuff. Following that was the Human Monies on a pole match between Danhausen and Dominik Mysterio. Whoever wins gets to keep the $100,000 that Danhausen has already stolen from the Judgment Day. 1. Why have the on a pole match immediately after the ladder match? Why have it on the same night at all? That was stupid. Secondly, this was a total TV match, a comedy TV match. I've not been the biggest fan of Danhausen's pay-per-view comedy matches so far. Not because, well, partly because I'm just a miserable guy, but also because I feel like they've eaten up quite a lot of time on otherwise sparse pay-per-views. But this one I didn't like for a different reason, and that was that it just didn't feel very imaginative. Have we hit diminishing returns on the Danhausen stuff already? This just felt like it could have taken place on any episode of Raw, in my opinion. They didn't get particularly... Right, you could have guessed how this was going to go, and it was probably going to have ended up somewhere close to what you'd guessed. I guessed Joe Hendry would get involved and help Danhausen win, and that's what happened. I didn't consider, even though I should have, the involvement of all the mini Danhausens, including El Torito, who, of course, hit some very flashy moves, as he always does. JD McDonough got involved as well. He was the one who Hendry hit with the guitar to take him out. And then Danhausen, what was the finish again? Yeah, Dom's about to pull down the sack of money, and Danhausen goes, "You are cursed." And then the ring post sparks fly up. Again, a thing we've seen before from Danhausen. Dom falls down, Danhausen retrieves the money, and that's it. There's nothing new here. I want to stress, That's not the fault of Danhausen. I'm not accusing Danhausen, of all people, of having limited creativity, because of course he's a very creative guy and very funny when allowed to be so. But I don't think WWE really let them do anything extra here. That's the vibe I got. And if you're going to put a Danhausen thing like this on a pay-per-view, at least give us something extra or memorable that we haven't seen before. And I must concede that they have kept Danhausen's matches fresh and unpredictable to this point. But at this point, then this one had nothing. Apart from Hendry showing up, he got a big pop. But because Hendry has already featured in the feud, it was expected that he was going to turn up. So beyond that entrance pop and the guitar shot, I don't really think that counts as something fresh because Joe's already been in the feud. Anyway, everybody involved tried to make the best of what I thought was quite a flat, uninspiring booking situation. But that was followed by a very enjoyable IC title match, to be fair, Penta versus Chad Gable. Chad Gable, the challenger, of course, coming off the back of, well, it was a little while ago now, but coming off the back of his legitimate match of the year contender against Ludwig Kaiser, or the Battle of the Americanos in AAA. What a match that was. And I think probably off the back of that feud entirely, Chad Gable is given an IC title opportunity here in his hometown of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's not as good as that previous match, of course not, but that's not like realistic to expect. That was like a once-in-a-lifetime level of match. But he left it all out there in this one again, and Penta did his part as well. Like, they both really went for it, actually. Penta nearly landed very scarily off a big dive to the outside. I think he almost landed on his neck, but appeared fine, carried on the match and everything. Gable had all the intensity, he was bringing it, he got busted open hard way at one point. It had the feel of a proper title match, and that's what you want, especially given the IC title's history at SummerSlam in particular. Now, of course, this was a babyface versus babyface match, but that does not mean we don't get to see some viciousness, as well as the story is that Chad Gable's arm is injured and Penta targets it quite ruthlessly, although he does at one point say, "I'm sorry, Chad," before then kicking the arm several times, wrenching it back, doing the Lucha Underground arm-breaking spot and everything. And Chad Gable is seriously in trouble, but he's got that hometown spirit and the crowd roaring him on and his family in the crowd and everything. Very classic storytelling, done very well. We also get some super gnarly apron spots, like a German suplex on the apron or a Mexican destroyer on the apron as well. And then the finish involves Penta getting stuck in an ankle lock, but it was done really well. Like, he went for another destroyer in the ring, Gable evaded it, grabbed this ankle lock, and then timed it to perfection, the drop down into the grapevine, and the crowd come alive, and Penta taps immediately once Gable's dropped down, and it's like this big explosion of noise and joy and lovely stuff. Noise and joy and lovely things. The aftermath's very cool too, up to a point. We get Chad Gable celebrating with his family in very heartwarming fashion. They all get in the ring with him. He gets on the mic, cuts a little promo. Penta's very sporting as well, saying congratulations, Chad. He leaves. It's Gable and his family, and it's a lovely, personal, heartwarming moment. So obviously it's time for some product placement. Is nothing sacred anymore? This is so modern day WWE. After Chad's just gone, thank you to my family, thank you to everybody in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I love you all, I've done it, I'm the IC champion. And then a big mascot gets on the ring for Mug Root Beer, the most delicious root beer of all. It's got that dog in it. And the mascot gets on the apron behind Gable. And Gable's like, come on, throw me a few frosty root beers, please, Mr. Mascot. And the mascot does, and Gable's he's like Steve Austining the root beer. And then Gable backs up, like, so lost in the moment towards the mascot. And I'm like, oh, not just me. Every wrestling fan watching will be conditioned to expect that mascot to be a heel in disguise waiting to attack and ruin the new champion's big hometown moment. It's not. It's just the mascot. You know what I enjoy after achieving like a lifetime dream in front of my family and friends and my hometown? I enjoy a Mug's root beer, the best one. Sorry, it's just Mug root beer, singular. Mug. I enjoy a mug, not a mug of root beer. I enjoy a can of Mug's root beer. Other vessels are available. And finally, for the World Heavyweight Championship and for the soul of the Shield and the memory of the stable that was the Shield, Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins. This was a match that I think I'm going to have to watch again to decide how much I really liked it. But my prevailing thought coming out of it was, it's kind of what I expected it to be. Very melodramatic, lots of references to the Shield. Yes, they teased the chair to the back a couple of times. A lot of dialogue, a lot of trash talk, a lot of, it's just you and me now. You know, all the history, all the kind of self-importance of the Shield and its lore. But if it was going to end in any way that, you know, can't involve Moxley as well, pretty good. This was a very Triple H match, and what I mean by that is specifically probably his match at WrestleMania 28 against The Undertaker, the end of an era match. This kind of was, I think, shown to us to be the end of a different era. In fact, at the very end of the match, Michael Cole's there on commentary saying, like, the final chapter of the Shield and all that kind of stuff. But again, I think there was definitely a lot here to enjoy. It was certainly more enjoyable than I thought it would be heading in. And the reason I was quite skeptical heading in was because I thought, this is going to be too slow, too overwrought, too boring at times. But instead, because they took it so seriously and because they clearly put a lot of thought into it, Roman and Seth got the crowd hooked, and the crowd returned the favour and really boosted the bigger moments in the match. And it became something very exciting at times. I don't think it was quite Roman's best match recently. I don't think it was quite Roman versus Punk. But I think that for this type of match and for the story they kind of had to tell given their history, I think it was about as good as it could have been. And I think credit must go to both and to the crowd as well in Minneapolis. There was maybe a certain over-reliance on certain things, like stealing the finishes of one another or relying on things we've already seen, like the spear reversal into the pedigree from Seth. Although, to be honest, I don't really get sick of that reversal. I quite like it whenever it happens. And I think maybe that's quite a good way to sum up the match on the whole. Kind of expected tropes that we knew were going to be in this match, delivered in an unexpected way. For example, we had Roman hitting the Shield bomb, the power bomb through the announce table on Seth. Then going for a powerbomb through the other announce table next to it. Seth getting out of that and then quite quickly hitting that powerbomb on Roman instead. The way I've described that sounds really simple, like one guy hit a powerbomb and then the other one did, but I promise you, watching it live, it actually was exciting. Some of the near falls as well. This is where I think the wrestlers deserve credit for the crowd being loud. The crowd deserve credit too, of course, but the wrestlers deserve credit for making the crowd bite so loud on a couple of very close near falls. I think my favourite two were Seth going for his superplex into Falcon Arrow combo, but Roman counters the second part into a guillotine. Seth powers slowly out, but turns straight into a spear, and the camera does the slow zoom out as well when there's going to be like a big match finishing move, but it's a kick out instead. I like that little production trick. And then the other really good near fall came right after that. Roman getting angry, going for his extra super bouncy spear, the one that finished off Punk and countless others. But Seth counters it with a spear of his own for a very, very close near fall as well. There were real high points here. Then came the melodrama. The ref gets bumped with an accidental spear and we get the Shield betrayal spot with the chair to the back. Seth goes for it. Roman couldn't work out. Someone in my Patreon chat suggested that he saw Seth on the big screen behind him and turned into an uppercut, which probably is true. At first, I thought that Roman just realised where he was and in which position and thought, he's about to hit me with a chair. Either works. Then Roman gets control of the chair. He's about to do it to Seth, but he's grown now. Roman once was a boy, but now he is a man. And he throws the chair away, and they settle this like men. And it's cheesy, and it's melodramatic, as I've said, but it works. Because what is the Shield if not cheesy and melodramatic? You know, they were very popular for a reason. People bought into that stuff. Punch, 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 punch. Then they start to hit finishes again and stuff, steal each other's finishes. But ultimately, when all is said and done, without resorting to the chair, Roman Reigns is the better man. And they celebrate together. They do the fists like in the middle and everything without Ambrose/Moxley, but what can you do? And that's it. That's the end of the Shield era, apparently. Now, I don't have a problem with the result. I think it makes sense. I think that Seth winning the belt here would have been definitely exciting and a shock, but I think it would also have raised a lot of questions and like, well, where do we go from here then? It would have felt maybe like plans had been thrown out of the window. And that's not always a good thing. Sometimes it is. I don't know if it would have been in this case. So my problem isn't with Roman retaining. I think that's fine. My problem is what happens next. Is Roman going to disappear for a while? Because if that's the case, then I would rather Seth had won the belt. Is Roman going to have a series of opponents that he doesn't really do any favors for, doesn't help look good, even if they get defeated? I don't know. I don't know what's next for Roman. That's my issue. Hey, maybe, you know what? Maybe Seth should have won. Maybe Seth should have. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I'm actually worried about what's next, because we could be in for a very long autumn and winter if WWE don't know either. There we go. That is my review of WWE SummerSlam 2026. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to everybody for supporting the channel. Please drop a like on the video if you wish as well, and let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I've been Jack the Jobber. Thank you very much once again for watching, and I'll see you very soon.